I'm here with Damon Harvey, who's the Hastings District Councillor. Damon, we'll get onto the subject of amalgamation, but continuing on the theme of, at this stage, cooperation with the other councillors and shared services and that. There are a number of shared services. Some of them are long-standing and quite successful. Waste management, and that is one of them. What are other areas that you believe could be shared services?
Well, the big one for me is actually around our regulatory functions. Each council has building consenting departments. It has a team that, from a resource consenting perspective as well. And I think, and a lot of what they do from a regulatory perspective aligns back to the district plans, but also back at a national level. With MB, and I think because it is sort of standardised at that national level, why do we continue to actually have our own individual departments? Why would a building consenting officer from Hastings drive all the way over to Eskdale to process or to check over a building when a Napier consenting officer is closer? So to me, that would be one area immediately that I would be focusing on. There's different servicing levels. So we do some things really well. Napier doesn't, and vice versa. We've already contracted or provided services to Central Hawke's Bay from building consenting in the past, and that happens from time to time where they jump in if there's a heavier workload with one council at a particular time than one of the others. So I think that's a huge opportunity for us, and it'll give some consistency. It's not as if a Hastings builder doesn't do work in Napier, you
Yeah.
know. So it's the same, and I
Yeah.
think that's where a lot of the efficiencies, innovations and stuff can come from. They use a national processing online platform that's been developed for all of councils. So, which Hastings District Council has only recently adopted. So there's those sort of things that I think we can make some big inroads.
That would be dog licensing and things like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I think it just that to me that makes sense. Another one I think is actually in and around marketing and communications. I think there could be, and look at this only off the top of my head, but there may be 30 plus people that are involved in that space across councils, maybe more. And I think that that there are some opportunities to how that area could operate too.
Yeah. Now, the big question of amalgamation, and we all know the history of amalgamation. It was quite soundly defeated, I think, in 2015 when it was first mooted in Hawke's Bay. Um, do you think there is a case to go down the route of amalgamation again or into a unitary council?
Absolutely. And 2015 was a rinse and repeat of the previous time that amalgamation was mooted. In that, we always knew, and I was actively involved, as you know, in the amalgamation
Hmm.
last time as an outsider. We didn't sit on council, and worked alongside Lawrence Yule and a few others to attempt to amalgamate the councils. And there was a high percentage of Hastings people that were in support of it, and vice versa, a high percentage against it in Napier,
Yeah.
and then similarly in Wairoa. So the whole proposition last time to now is really different. Yeah, the debt profiles of all councils is now climbing, and so. And there's been performance issues as well with councils over the last what are we now? It's 9 years since the last attempt. So I think we should be looking at it. I think it should be staged in that or phased in. So I would look at the metropolitans and what I call metropolitans or the cities, so Hastings and Napier, alongside the regional council. I think those three be bitten off first. The door's open for both Central and Wairoa. Central, I think, would be more open to it than what Wairoa would. And I think, Wairoa is in a difficult situation because of their isolation. And where do they sit? Are they best to be alongside Hawke's Bay, the rest of Hawke's Bay, or that amalgamation, or are they better to be with Tairāwhiti, or is there a blended option there as well? So I think there needs to be quite a bit of work done to try and find that model, but I can see that Hastings, Napier, and the regional council would be that first step forward.
Do you think the public appetite for amalgamation has changed? What would be different this time? Why do you say?
Absolutely. I just think we positioned it wrong last time as well. I think there was a lot of people. It really wasn't grassroots led. It was sort of a little bit elevated than that, and that was just the people that were around and trying to drive it through. I think it needs to be grassroots led, and I've had conversations with Napier-based people actually more than Hastings around this issue, and there seems to be a lot more appetite from Napier from the people that I talk to that it should be back on the table. And I'm hearing exactly the same on the west coast of the South Island, only just now on the radio. They are looking at a unitary authority or, a reorganisation of some form or other. I think we need 10% of the community to sort of to create a poll, or as a poll to then go forward for a referendum. So we need to explore all of those sort of things. And look, it'd be great, really, if if we're in a place. It's a slow turning wheel within local government, but we have got the elections coming up next year, and it would be an ideal time to and do it where we can save some money with the referendum at that time.
The biggest fear at the last time there was a referendum, and even now, is people say, "Oh, but we'll lose our local representation, and we won't have the mayor coming in and doing a ribbon cutting for our little school hall or whatever." How do you how do you get around that where you're going to have one sort of central mayor, if you like, and then maybe representation will look different on a local level? How do you get around that fear of losing that localism?
Andrew, we're a combined population of around 180,000 in Hawke's Bay in its entirety. There are bigger cities in New Zealand that have one mayor, and you only have to look at Tauranga that's just gone through a by-election. I think they have 9 to 10 councillors and a mayor. On a population basis that's larger than Hastings, and actually larger than the combined of Hawke's Bay, and it's going to be more. I think it'll be more effective, in that number. 2 years, last year, the year before, we looked at our council numbers around the table, where we introduced the Māori. When we introduced the Māori wards, we dropped back on the Hastings Havelock North ward from 8 to 7 councillors. We could easily have dropped that back to 5, to be quite frank. I think we've got too many around our table. There's 15 of us, and so I think a mayor getting around to things, I don't think there would be any impact at all. That role that would continue, and I think decision making would be more efficient, and the representation model. I do look at that Hastings Havelock ward. To me, is a classic example whereby, as I said, there was 8 of us. Now there's 7. We'd be just as effective if there was a couple less.
Now, if there is there any move to call for amalgamation? Are you organising anything? What is happening?
bugger all's happening, to be
Yeah.
quite frank. I've made some comments about it. Again, in the media,
Yeah.
there was, and that sort of came about because of, there are some things that are changing within local government. The government wants us to look at a water entity for the region. So there are some things that are starting to happen that are actually drawing us together more than what we have been in the past. So it's like, well, hey, we're doing this sort of stuff. Why actually don't we have that conversation? I'm not privy to what happens at a mayoral level. They have a monthly catch up. Whether they talk about it or not, I don't know. I have spoken to at least one other mayor who believes that there has to be changes within the structure. So we've got on later this month, we're all going to Wairoa, all the councillors from each council, and maybe it's on the table. Maybe it's on the table for discussion then.
Yeah. Now, recently, your council voted unanimously to uh, retain Maori wards. This is despite recent legislation from the government that as a result of you doing this, you're going to have to hold a referendum at the next election and let the people decide whether you go forward with that at the following election. How do you think that process was, and are you happy that your council made that decision?
It was a pretty easy decision for
Yeah.
us around our table. We were one of the first to adopt Māori involvement in a governance level at council. We've had Māori representatives on our subcommittee and standing committees for some time. So it's just a natural progression to go where we are now. But we made that call. We made that decision, the people sitting around the table. And I think, next year, it's the community's time to actually make that decision. And there's a lot of work, I think, that needs to be done between then and now and then, to actually educate or show and demonstrate the positive influence and impact that Māori representatives are having around council tables. I think they come from a real deep, especially when it comes to the land or the whenua and the decisions and stuff. Their visions and how they protect is way more visionary than what we have done in the past. Their relationship with water, same thing. So those are sort of questions and the value that they've been able to bring to the table. And also, look, it's about engagement with the community as well. And I love going on to a marae, but they are much more deeply entrenched in their communities and therefore can provide that position and those thoughts and things that they're picking up around when we're making decisions, making much sounder decisions.
Well, how do you feel a referendum would go? Do you think the community wants Māori wards?
I think it's going to be a difficult ask. You tend to hear, like we've had, we made the decision 2 weeks ago, and the room was full of Māori, and they were the supporters of the position that we've now taken. But at the same time, there's a lot of people out there that create some divisiveness around this situation. So I made, when I spoke at that council meeting, it was that they needed to rally the troops. They need to, and so does council. Council needs to demonstrate and tell the community of the benefits that happen because of having strong representation around the table.
Now, how do you think, having voted for for Māori wards, how do you think that will affect your election chances?
Um, Again, I think it comes down to I'm not concerned about it at all.
Mm.
And I think it's actually how you position and how you articulate what you see as the benefits. It's like people say to me, the mayor has the mayor is incredibly influential, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, it's those around it's the combined council that ends up making the decisions, right? When
Yeah,
it comes to voting. You
yeah,
only just need to tip over that edge of, 50% to get something across the line. So that's something that I think strongly. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're saying is the community, you've now got a choice.
yeah,
You make that choice on what is the representation model that we will have going forward beyond the next election. The other thing with that is I still think that the representation model for our council is not right. As I said, we've got 7 representatives for the Hastings Havelock North Ward. There's 15 councillors in totality. It's potentially too cumbersome,
yeah.
and I just wish that when we're looking at representation, we're actually looking at the bigger picture of representation and what is best fit for the community of today.